There's a lot going on in the world right now, but if you're on social media, and of course you are, because it's really America's only remaining news source, you know there's only one story going on, and it's Israel. Everyone online is arguing about Israel, and really they fall into one of two camps, generally speaking. So probably the more aggressive side are the deranged Taliban-level ethno-narcissists who are telling you that any criticism of the secular government of Israel is tantamount to blood libel against the Jewish people. And if you think that maybe it was not a great idea to arm Joseph Stalin, the greatest murderer in history, then you're a Holocaust denier. Shut up! And then on the other side, a group every bit as obsessed with Jews are the people who hate Jews, who are telling you that anyone who's Jewish is bad by virtue of being Jewish. It's a blood thing. Two things are interesting. One, there are very few kind of conventional Christian voices saying, wait a second, this is a secular government, another country, and it has probably nothing to do with my religion or anybody's religion, and we should never judge people on the basis of their immutable qualities because guilt and virtue are not passed down genetically. But almost no one is saying that. So you really have the ethno-narcissists and the anti-Semites, and they're at war with each other. That's the online picture. What's even more interesting and maybe even more distressing is that in the U.S. government, the conversation, while much more muted, is a mirror of this in that a lot of the conversation is about Israel. Israel, a tiny country in the Middle East. Not critical to our national security, by the way. But the conversation, the bandwidth, is consumed by questions of Israel. So wherever you stand on Israel, whether you're on one of the two sides just described or neither one of them, you know in your gut that this is bad. If a country like ours, supposedly the most powerful in the world, is devoting all of its time internally to conversations about Israel, it's probably not going in a good direction. There's probably a lot being neglected in favor of this very specific boutique conversation about this tiny little country. It's just not good for anybody, including Israel, by the way. So what's the antidote to this? How do you fix it? Here are 4 things you can do to make the conversation about Israel and the relationship with Israel a lot healthier than it currently is. Here are the 4. The first is get some global perspective on what we're talking about. The United States is a nation of 350 million people. It has some of the deepest natural resources in the world. That would include energy and water, agricultural products. The United States, however it's managed, is a powerhouse globally and always will be because its strength is inherent. It's a huge, decisive country in the scope of world history. The United States makes things happen. Israel is not an insult, merely an observation. By contrast, is a tiny and inherently insignificant country, at least geopolitically, in that it has only 9 million people and no natural resources, no meaningful natural resources. So it is insignificant. It is also physically tiny. It's about the size of New Jersey, famously, but it has a much smaller GDP than New Jersey. It just doesn't really matter, actually. If you're looking at a map and thinking through, where does power politics go? Israel's not even on the list. Again, it's tiny. It's got the population of Burundi. It's got a smaller population than Belgium. What is this anyway? And yet, despite its objective insignificance, it is the focus of the conversation, but it's also the focus of the spending. So right now, as we speak, tonight, there are 2 THAAD missile batteries in Israel. That's 1/4 of the world's total supply of THAAD missile batteries. The THAAD missile battery is an American-made, very high-tech missile battery that takes incoming missiles out of the sky. And 1/4 of the world's entire supply of these is in Israel right now, manned by U.S. troops, by Americans. In uniform or not, they are American military personnel, and they are manning these batteries to protect Israel. And that shouldn't surprise you because since October 7th, 2023, which is a little less than 2 years ago, the United States has spent at minimum $30 billion defending Israel. Israel is by far, no one comes close, the largest recipient of U.S. aid over time and currently. So anyone who says, oh, it's just a drop in the bucket, it's totally insignificant, is lying or doesn't know the numbers. By the way, number 2 is Egypt. So why are we spending so much money on Egypt? Well, we're doing it at the request of Israel. So you could probably add that to the tally. It's not an attack. It's merely perspective. We are spending our time, our money, and we're taking enormous risks on behalf of a country that geopolitically is not significant at all. The interesting thing is, most Americans have no idea that this is true. They don't know how disproportionate our attention to Israel and our spending on Israel is relative to the rest of the world. And if you want some sense of how disproportionate, India and China combined, neither of which is a strong ally at the moment, combined represent more than a third of the entire world's population. Both are rivals economically, both are rivals militarily, at least potentially. And our relationship with them has gotten worse, or is at the very least languished, because of our relationship with Israel, because of the bandwidth consumed by tending to it, and also because of some of the inevitable conflicts that have arisen because of our support for Israel, which is engaged in an extremely controversial, which is to say hated war in Gaza, which is not even really a war. It's a massive displacement of people and killing on a grand scale of unarmed people, of unarmed combatants, of civilians, of women and children. And the world sees this, and the world rejects it, and the world hates it. And so Israel's really last remaining ally of size, other than the UK, is the United States. And so there's a huge cost to this. But again, most Americans have no perspective on just how disproportionate our commitment is, because they marinate in lies about this relationship, mostly from our political class, also from the media, but really, if you were to lay the blame on one group in the United States, it's our elected leaders who continuously lie to us about the nature of this relationship, its significance, and they do it generationally. They've been doing it for many decades. Here, and this is just one example, but the most fun to watch. This is Nikki Haley at the Republican presidential primary debate 2023, describing the United States' relationship with the state of Israel. Watch.
Last thing we need to do is to tell Israel what to do. The only thing we should be doing is supporting them and eliminating Hamas. It is not that Israel needs America. America needs Israel.
It is not that Israel needs the United States. The United States needs Israel. How could that possibly be true? It is in no sense true. In fact, it's one of those lies that's not 3 degrees off the truth. It is a complete inversion of the truth. And the truth, which is obvious to anyone who looks at the numbers or is paying any attention at all, is that Israel could not survive without the United States. That's not an argument for pulling all aid to Israel. It's just an acknowledgement of the physical reality. Israel fights its wars with American backing, with the guarantee, the implied defense guarantee that we have provided for so many years, since at least 1973, 50 years. And its social services are made possible, which are quite generous, made possible by American subsidies. In other words, every dollar that goes to the Israeli military from the United States is a dollar that the nation of Israel can spend on its own people. And so there is no world in which America needs Israel more than Israel needs the United States. And of course, Nikki Haley was never asked to explain how exactly that could be true. What are you talking about, Governor Haley? Not one person asked her that question. And no one asked her that question because anyone in whose mind that question appeared would have paused for fear of being attacked as an anti-Semite for asking a question about geopolitics. That has been the state of play in the United States for my entire life, over 50 years. Politicians make nonsensical statements. Nobody wants to even ask a follow-up question for fear of being attacked. It is a state of perpetual intimidation. Everybody's afraid of Israel. Afraid of the topic, afraid, in some cases, of the state itself. We have not had an honest conversation about this, ever. Certainly not in my lifetime. And that suits the Israelis just fine. And if you're wondering why there's an awful lot of lunatic anti-Semitic comment about Israel online, you have to wonder how much of that is organic. Some of it, of course, there are always haters. But how much of it is not organic at all? How much of that, the lunatic, all Jews are evil, how much of that is being ginned up on purpose to make legitimate questions about the U.S. government's relationship with the government of Israel seem like crackpot stuff, like hate, like David Duke level lunacy? Probably some, because it serves their interests. Now, that is a criticism of the state of Israel and its incredibly sophisticated propaganda campaign, which, again, the rest of us have been marinating in for a long time. But the true villain here, I would argue, is not the state of Israel, the Jews. It's the United States. It's our leaders who are putting up with this. Israel is a small country with very limited resources, and it is doing its best to serve its own interests. You'd think every country would act that way, and most do. But there are some that don't, and ours would top that list. And so the true shame here, the actual villain in this story, is the leadership of the United States that is putting up with serial humiliation for decades. And for what reason? So if there's someone to be mad at, it's our leaders. And that leads to the second thing that we can do to fix this truly unhealthy relationship, this poisonous relationship, which is getting worse, by the way. It's breaking our society into pieces. It's truly hurting the Trump administration. The second thing we can do, after getting global perspective on what we're actually talking about here, a tiny country that is, in the deepest sense, insignificant to the United States, the second thing we can do is get some freaking self-respect and stop being ordered around by a client state. That's not good for us. It's not good for them. It's not good for anybody. It's like being screamed at by your children. No normal parent would allow that because it's totally destructive. It's not good for you, and it's not good for the child. And that is exactly the relationship that we have with the state of Israel. In fact, not in theory, in fact, it is a huge country and a tiny country. The huge country supports the tiny country, and that's a pretty nice thing to do. Whether it's wise or not is a whole separate conversation, but if you're gonna have that relationship, a parent to a child, you cannot be yelled at, humiliated, spied upon, bossed around by the child, by the person in the inherently subordinate position. You can't do that. And you can't be shamed into ignoring things that are quite clearly not the behavior of a subordinate ally to a big brother ally. The more you allow that kind of deeply unhealthy behavior, the more you're going to get. And that's exactly what has happened. Because of the weakness of our leaders, we have incited predators in a foreign country to take advantage of us. Oh, that's such an anti-Israel thing to say. It's not anti-Israel at all. It's a demand that the people whose job it is, whose sacred duty it is to defend and represent us, our leaders, both at the Pentagon and all throughout the U.S. government, that they do that they stand up and defend us against all potential threats, against all foreign countries to the extent they need to, and that they do not prostrate themselves before a foreign nation. That's just basic. Why have a government, especially a strong government, if it's taking orders from another weaker government? And that is the state of play. And it has been for a very long time. And they're not even pretending, to such an extent that the Prime Minister of Israel goes on television to openly participate in, meddle in internal American politics, taking sides, attacking people, Americans. You wouldn't think it would be his business. He's not an American leader. He's not even an American citizen. Going on television to attack Americans because they're not fully on board with sending billions more to a country of 9 million people? And in case you think that's an overstatement, here is the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, commenting on American politics.
He talked about the woke right, and he said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, you know, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're loonies. But they're actually meeting on some of the things. We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance. To that community, they're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. And the most important ones are in social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is
Followers.
TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. That's very good. And, you know, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot, and I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight.
It's almost unbelievable that he said that on camera. Imagine. This is a foreign leader bragging about how he's censoring Americans. Again, this guy runs a country of 9 million people that's totally dependent on our tax dollars to exist. And here he is on camera, and he's a sophisticated guy. Of course, he knows that he's being filmed, saying, anyone who opposes me in the United States, who opposes more aid to Israel or opposes getting sucked into war with Iran, which does not serve American interests, that person is not simply mistaken or wrong. I'm not going to bother to explain why that person is wrong. That person is a Nazi, part of the woke Reich, a Nazi. And the only way to fix it is by preventing Americans in the last country on earth with guaranteed freedom of speech, prevent Americans from hearing the other side. And so we push Congress to force a TikTok sale, which is true, by the way. And when that happened, and various members of Congress were like, no, really, it's about China, there were people online who said, no, I think it's really about Israel. You kind of wish it was about China. Here he is just admitting, no, we pushed the U.S. Congress to censor in the United States, to commit censorship in the United States because we think it's bad for us. And we need to talk to Elon. The only reason we have free speech in the United States right now is because of Elon Musk. By the way, a naturalized American, a foreigner, who looked at the United States and said, what's great about that country? People can say what they believe because they're not slaves, they're not subjects of the state, they're citizens of a nation that they own. Free speech is central to the entire idea of America. In fact, it's really the only thing that sets us apart from any other country on earth. It's not our market economy, it's freedom of speech. And here's this guy, a foreign head of state, who, let me restate, is totally dependent on our tax dollars to exist, is saying Americans don't have that right, and he's going to do some kind of secret pressure campaign on Elon Musk to censor X because it bothers Israel? You know, that's the point at which you just say, no, absolutely not. That is not allowed. But since no one has said that, it has continued. And that's why when you go on social media, you see person after person taking that guy's line, repeating foreign government talking points on social media as Americans. Oh, you can't say that. It's true. It's 100% true. And it's also totally counterproductive, by the way. This is not a sophisticated propaganda campaign. This is a brutal and brutish propaganda campaign, where anyone who disagrees with anything is immediately slandered and smeared. Megyn Kelly, who's got to be the single most moderate person on the question of Israel, who said 100 times and means it, by the way, I like Israel. I'm not against Israel. You know, but maybe it's not a great idea to get sucked into one of their wars. We've done that. Let's not do it again. Ah, Nazi! Immediately called her an anti-Semite and won't stop. Meanwhile, the actual anti-Semites, and there certainly are some online, never get criticized by Bibi or anyone else in his orbit. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? I wonder why that is. When you have actual anti-Semites, doing videos making fun of Auschwitz, but they get a pass? Maybe things are not quite as they seem. But normal people who harbor no hate toward anyone or try not to are immediately slandered in a way that makes it, in some cases, hard for them to have jobs if they deviate even a little bit. So what's the effect of this? Not that it's up to me to tell Israel how to run its propaganda campaigns, but the effect, just noticing, is that it turns allies into enemies. You can agree on 98% of things, but if you think maybe it was a bad idea to bomb Doha, Qatar, the site of the largest military base in the Middle East, which exists to protect Israel, if you think it was a bad idea for the Israeli government to bomb Doha, then you're a Nazi? Just in point of fact, by the way, Hamas was originally in Qatar because the Israeli government asked them to accept Hamas. That airbase exists to protect Israel, by the way. That was such a reckless and demented move that Mossad in Israel opposed it and wouldn't participate in it because they thought it was too reckless. So to say that there is, quite a bit of latitude for debate in Israel is an understatement. Mossad refused to participate in that. But as an American, on social media, if you're like, I think it's a little crazy that our ally is bombing another one of our allies without even telling us, and then lying and pretending that they had permission from the president to do this, which they did not. If you say that, you're a Nazi, you're part of the woke Reich, this can't continue. It's too crazy. It's counterproductive for them, and it's deeply destructive of our political conversation and of our country itself. Now, the good news is that the humiliation, which has gone, just give you one more example of the humiliation, which is almost beyond belief. So Israel's our greatest ally. We should never ask anything of them. Of course, you heard Nikki Haley. You hear all of them say exactly the same thing. Protecting Israel is the most important thing. They're our only real ally. If they're our only real ally, why does Israel have a long history of transferring military technology, including American military technology, to China? To China? Most people have no idea that's true. It is true. Why is China running the port of Haifa, Israel's biggest port? Really, if they're such a close ally? And of course, the answer is because from Israel's perspective, we're not a close ally. We're a country that has been willing to help them. But when you only have 9 million people and a limited defense budget, you take help where you can get it. So the loyalty is not requited. It's one way. And I think the good news is that the government of Israel, in particular, the prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has pushed it too far. And he did that in part by running around telling people what he thought was true, apparently. I control Donald Trump. I control the United States Congress. I control the United States. He said that to political allies and opponents in his country. He said it to foreign heads of state. Fact. I control these people. Don't you worry. And by the way, if you kick me out of office, the next guy probably won't have the level of control that I have. He's made that case. Openly, verbally. He said it out loud. And that was too much for our president. And so in one of the great moments, it was a cool shower on a hot day. President Trump pushed back, not directly, but you can watch this clip and see that he's had enough. Here is President Trump the other day asked about Israel's plans to annex the West Bank. Watch.
Did you promise leaders this week that you would not allow Israel to annex the West Bank? And is that something that you...
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
Did you speak with Netanyahu about this directly?
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow it. Whether I spoke to him or not, I did. But I'm not allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. There's been enough. It's time to stop.
It's been enough. I will not allow it. He's not just talking about the West Bank there, obviously. These are political people. They understand when your poll numbers fall dramatically, particularly among the young men who help make you president, you have to ask, why is that? And it's about this issue, because it's too humiliating. And people who don't want to see their government bossed around by a tiny foreign power are not haters. They don't hate any ethnic group. They just don't want to be humiliated. And by the way, why should they be humiliated? That's the core problem right there. That's why Donald Trump has lost support over this Israel question, and he knows that, and he's pushing back, and there's just no question from that clip whatsoever. So the third thing I think that would be very helpful to restore health and balance to the relationship between the United States and Israel is restore the concept of citizenship in the United States. If you're an American citizen, it means something. The first thing it means is equality. You are equal to every other citizen. There's no hierarchy of citizenship. All citizens are equal. Each gets one vote. Each gets justice before the law. That's the promise of the United States, and each gets to say exactly what he thinks, period. Restore the value of citizenship. And the very first thing you would do if you cared about that, and you should, because the country can't continue without it, after you expelled everyone who's not a citizen from the country, which should happen immediately. They should be deported immediately for our own survival. But after doing that, the first thing you would do is not allow dual citizenship. Why would you allow that? You're a citizen of two countries. Can you really serve two masters simultaneously? By the way, it's not just Israelis who have dual citizenship. Every nationality has dual citizenship in this country. It's not just Israel. And it shouldn't be allowed for a single moment. What is that? Whose side are you on? Don't accuse me of dual loyalty. Well, you're a dual citizen. Whether it's Argentina or Mali or Israel, not allowed. And moreover, you are not allowed to serve in a foreign military without losing your American citizenship. You're fighting for another country? How can that be allowed? How can you retain your citizenship? By the way, why aren't you serving in our military? Every country has a different perspective on the world, and that grows from a whole bunch of different things: their history, their language, their size, their resources. But each country is different, and each country has a different set of priorities. And if you're fighting in a military for a country, you are not serving America's priorities. You're taking up arms on behalf of a foreign power. You're done. This would seem to be obvious. Many Americans have fought in Israel, in Gaza. Many Americans have fought in Ukraine, by the way, and a lot of other countries for foreign militaries. Lose your citizenship immediately. Of course. Obviously. It's amazing that even exists. And only AIPAC is exempt. What is the effect of that? It makes everyone paranoid. Doesn't make people like Israel more. When a topic cannot be spoken about, and when anyone who raises it is called a Nazi, the woke Reich, or dismissed as a Holocaust denier, anti-Semite, or whatever, slandered in some way like that, it doesn't make the problem go away. It festers, and people go crazy and get angry and become resentful. End all that. There's no reason to conduct any business like that in secrecy. It doesn't make things better at all. It doesn't make the person doing it stronger. It makes him weaker, actually, in the end. And the last thing that I think we need to do to restore balance between the relationship between the United States and Israel, and to restore some sanity to the public conversation on this topic, is to get our theology right. And this is not a message aimed at Israelis or Jews. This is a message aimed at Christians, who are the largest group of Israel supporters in the United States. And their view of Israel is colored not just by sentimental attachment, which is fine, or trips to Israel, great, no problem, but by a Christian heresy, the oldest of the Christian heresies, which is that God somehow prefers some people based on their DNA. And of course, the whole point of Christianity is that that is no longer true, that there is no chosen people. The chosen people are people who choose Jesus. That is the Christian message right there. It's not an anti-Semitic message, by the way. It's the Christian message. It's the core Christian message. And yet there are many, many self-described representatives of the Christian faith, the world's largest, who are daily sending a different message. And we should be very clear. Whatever this is, it's not Christianity, it is heresy. And among the many examples we could pick, we're going to go, because we couldn't control ourselves, with Lindsey Graham. Watch.
To people in my party, I'm tired of this crap. Israel is our friend. They're the most reliable friend we have in the Mideast. They're a democracy, surrounded by people who would cut their throats if they could. This is not a hard choice if you're an American. It's not a hard choice if you're a Christian. A word of warning. If America pulls the plug on Israel, God will pull the plug on us.
God will kill you if you don't support Bibi Netanyahu. That's what he's saying. And there are cheers, unfortunately, and cheers when he said that God will kill you. He will pull the plug on you like a quadriplegic in intensive care. You're going to flatline unless you support the secular abortion-on-demand government of Israel. That's the Christian perspective, really. That God loves some people more because of their DNA, that is not the Christian message. That's the opposite of the Christian message. The Christian message is universal. That's the whole point of it. The chosen people in Christianity are those who choose Jesus. The entire New Testament is that story. And anyone who says otherwise has not read it or is lying. God does not prefer you because of your DNA or anyone else because of their DNA, period. So the fact that people can stand up in the United States in 2025 and say something like that, and by the way, not even make the case, just invoke the power of God as a weapon. He will kill you. He'll pull the plug on your country unless you go along with this. We need more war. Listen to yourself. And it's not just Lindsey Graham. It's the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. It's a lot of people, some of whom are very nice people. People have dinner with them. They seem perfectly normal. But this is a heresy, and it's deranged. And you know it's deranged because it is a justification for killing the innocent. And in Christianity, if there's one thing that's crystal clear, it's that Christians cannot abide the killing of the innocent. People who have done nothing wrong cannot be killed. That's a sin. You are not allowed to do that, period. And if you find anyone leveraging the message of Jesus to justify the killing of innocents, that person is committing heresy. So those are the 4 things I think that we probably should do right away to restore some balance and health, reduce the craziness in the relationship and the conversation about Israel.